Cheers and welcome to episode 3 of Beginner's Guide to Coil Building. Today what we're going to do is we're going to delve into some temp control, some nickel builds. Now I know it's not for everybody. There's a lot of people out there that are a little bit skittish when it comes to nickel. And I can understand that because the first thing I want to tell you is there are some safety concerns. The research isn't all out there. We don't have all of the information yet about nickel. So if you don't feel comfortable with nickel, don't vape nickel. That's it, bottom line. If you don't feel comfortable with temp control and nickel, don't do it. I would never suggest you do something that you feel unsafe with. Now with that said, what I'm going to tell you is this. Any nickel coils you see me build in any of my videos, they're going to be spaced coils. I'm never going to show you, how to use a mech mod and, pulse and pinch a nickel coil. Green did it, and I think he's been biting himself in the ass for it ever since. Or, sorry, kicking himself in the ass for it ever since. Other people are biting his ass. Anyway, the point is, though, you can have a great vape with nickel coils. What I found is I love temp control, and I love nickel. I think I get an awesome vape from it. One of the things that I like about it is it's not hot, but it's very flavorful, it has a lot of vapor, and it's very consistent. It's always giving me a good hit, a good hit, a good hit. So what we're going to do today, is we're going to be using 28 gauge Ni200 pure nickel wire. We're going to do a spaced wrap around a 2.5 millimeter jig. We're going to do 9 wraps, and what we're hoping to come in at is about 0.08 ohms, maybe 0.08 to about anywhere from 0.07 to 0.09 ohms, somewhere's in there, right in that range. What we're going to do is we're going to build the coil, we're going to mount it, we're going to wick it using the hourglass wick, and we're going to vape the shit out of it. And hopefully you enjoy temp control as much as I do. Again, if it's not something you're into, you can go ahead and skip to episode 5, building your first Clapton coil, or possibly episode 6, building dual coils on a small deck with the Zephyrus. But if you are into temp control and you want to start building your own nickel coils, this is a great place to start. So let's move over to the workbench and let's get this shit started. Cheers. Cheers and welcome to the build portion of episode 3. What we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be working again on our Kanger Subtank Mini, and we're going to be putting into this a spaced nickel coil to use for temp control. And the first thing I'm sure I pointed it out in the beginning, much like I did, if you're going to be building with nickel and using nickel, you only want to use it on a temp control device. And with that said, you only want to use it in temp control mode. You don't want to be using it in power mode. What I'm going to suggest is that you never try to build a touching nickel coil because you cannot remove its hot spots. You do not want to dry fire nickel, and therefore working with space coils is really the only way I'm ever going to show you anything to do with nickel. Your safety is my number 1 concern. Teaching you something is number 2. So yeah, this is what we're going to be building on. We're going to be doing a 28 gauge nickel, 28 gauge pure nickel, and we're going to be doing 9 wraps around a 2.5 millimeter jig, and we're hoping to come out somewhere's around 0.11. I mean, it may be 0.08 to anywhere to 1.3. Nickel is very finicky. There's a lot of variances to do with leg lengths, etc., etc. But that's sort of the realm that we're shooting for, and hopefully by the time we're done, that's what we have. So let's get started. Now, of course, I haven't washed this out, so mine is a juicy dripping puddle of mess that I will need to dry off a bit before we get this started. The first thing is you want to remove your chimney cap and set that aside. In fact, I even had mine off in a little bit. I'm going to give mine a little wipe on the inside, and I'm sure it's going to be pretty messy because all I've done is refilled this tank for about the past 3 weeks. Yeah, pretty gunged up, pretty shitty looking. So I'll take this opportunity to kind of give it a clean. I won't do a full clean at the sink or anything. I just want to get this to where we can use it to do our build this evening. Alright, when you're removing the set screw for the barrel, you just want to give it maybe a half turn to a full turn. You do not want to remove that screw because you don't want to lose it. Then slide your barrel off straight, put your barrel aside, and I'm now going to remove the build that I have in here now. I'm just going to remove, or not remove, but loosen the screws that capture the leads. And boy, are my fingers getting all juiced up. We're getting juicy at this point, baby. We're getting really juicy. Anyway, that's one thing with my videos you'll find. I try to make them fun, entertaining. I mean, trust me, nothing like Rip Trickers. I don't think anybody can do what he does. But I will do my best to entertain you as I teach you something. Again, like I said, this is very, very messy. My deck is still very, very much covered in juice, and it's getting all over my fingers and driving me crazy. That's one thing you'll want, is not to have juice on your fingers, because it makes everything slipping and sliding and gooey and shitty and gross. So, oh, I dropped a screw. That's something else you want to be careful of. You don't want to lose your screws that hold down your leads. It does come with extras, but best not to lose them.
Oh my god.
That noise you heard was my wife in the background. She's watching her show. You may periodically over the next few minutes hear her scream out. Alright, here's our deck, and what we're going to want is just one revolution off of the spool. That should give us plenty of wire to make 9 wraps. Again, this is going to be a spaced coil. This is nickel. You'll find that nickel is very soft. It's very easy to manipulate. I know a lot of people say it's hard to work with. I think what they really mean is that it's hard to get the resistance that you want and get a build that you want and get it mounted into a deck without having some type of problem. That's true. Nickel is finicky that way. But one thing I can tell you, it is very soft and very pliable. So that will work in our favor. Okay? I'm using a Coil Master with a 2.5mm rod. I'm going to insert my wire, and I'm going to attempt to put, what I'll actually do is I'll probably put 11 full wraps, and then I'll pull 2 full wraps out, leaving me with 9 wraps. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because I want a little wiggle room to be able to space the coil, get it looking good, and then ultimately pull out wraps to leaving the best looking wraps as what I use for my coil. So here we go. Definitely, if you're going to use something like the Coil Master, you don't want to put a lot of pressure towards the handle as you spin it. You want to let the wire sort of freely flow around the rod. If you're pushing too hard, what you could end up doing is getting the wire to overlap itself and start winding on one spot, which would be completely useless to us. So here we go.
Oh God.
We're going for 11 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I'm just going to push that just to make sure that I've got full wraps. I'm going to take it off of my coil master. I'm going to put it back on, and I'm going to pinch one lead against the base, the handle, and I'm going to take my pliers, and I'm now going to stretch out that coil. If you can see that there, what I'm doing, I'm just stretching it out along the rod. And now it's not going to be very even, it's not going to look very nice. See if I can get that in focus for you. There it is. And how we're going to get that back looking nice is I'm going to bend the leads so that they're going the opposite ways, which indicates full wraps. Now that is still 11 full wraps. I haven't taken any out yet. And I'm just going to put my cap back on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the coil back against the base of the coil master and just give it a few taps. Now, if I look at it, I can see where ugly coils are. There it made a bit of a bend in it, so this is going to be definitely one of the sides that I take at least one wrap off. Let me just show you what that looks like right now. Okay? There you go. Like I say, you can get things, you know, this is not hard. It's not rocket science. It doesn't take a lot of skill. It does take a bit of practice. Alright, so I'm going to pull one full wrap out, which means I want the opposite lead going in opposite ways. Now I do need to pull out another full wrap. I'm just going to have a look at this and see which would be the best side. Now I do like the way this side looks. What I'm thinking is I might take a wrap out of the other side. Yes, I think I will. So I'm going to grab this short lead this time and again pull so that the opposite lead goes in the opposite direction. There you go. So now what that's left us with is 9 beautiful spaced nickel wraps. And I'll pull this off and again let you have a look. In fact, you may even be able to count the wraps in the video. There you go. Alright, let's get this mounted in our RBA. You do want the coil to be sitting in the middle above the airflow. And the other thing I want to tell you is be careful not to break your leads. You want to kind of be gentle with them. You don't want to be too rough. Like I say, leaving that coil over the center of the airflow. And then what we're going to do is we're going to trap the other lead. And same thing. Trap the lead down. And do the other side. Make sure both of them are snug. Don't over tighten them to the point of breaking the wire. Now if you have a look, that's not going to look so great right away, but we will improve how it looks over the next couple of minutes. First thing, I would just want to trim off my excess wire. And then I'm going to use my mandrel to put inside the center of the coil so that I can manipulate the coil. Now this is the exact same size as the coil, and what I want to do is kind of push it down so that the coil is closer to the center of the RBA deck, right over the airflow. That's what I want. Now sometimes this can get pretty tight on your mandrel. It just takes some working. You know, whether you're using a drill bit or a screwdriver bit, you know, whatever the case may be, whatever you're using, like I say though, you do want to leave it spaced, and you do want it over the center of the airflow hole. and you do want it close. Now I have this quite close to the deck. I'm actually going to lift it up just a hair, because as much as I want it close, I don't want it too close, because I don't want any chance of a short. I don't want any chance that I push a piece of cotton and suddenly my coil is touching the deck. So here you go. This is our nickel coil, 9 wraps spaced. See if I can get that in focus for you. You should be able to see that. And it, as you can see, it fits real nice, really nice in that deck. And there you go. There you can see the space by seeing the light coming through between the coil and the deck. And that's exactly what you want. Now, unlike Kanthal, we are not going to dry fire this coil. I know it sounds like I'm, beating a dead horse, but the reality is this is about safety. It's not about fucking around or being an asshole or playing games. This is nickel coil. I made it spaced for a reason. It should have no hot spots. Because again, we are not going to dry fire this. At this point, we're just going to wick it and prime it and tank it. The other thing is, when you're putting cotton in a coil, in a nickel coil, you have to remember that that nickel is very, very, very soft. And if your wick is too thick and too tight, when you go to pull it, even if you're twisting the back end to try to relieve that pressure, you could end up pulling the coil, and you could end up pulling the coil right out of its position, and basically you'd have to start from scratch again. You don't want to do that. That sucks. So I just have a little piece of cotton here because that's all I need. By the time I'm done, I just need, about 3/4 of what I got here. I'm just hoping that this is thin enough to fit through the coil and not pull the coil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it by putting one in through first, grabbing it, and I'm not going to pull very hard, and then I'm going to start twisting. And I want to basically feel almost no tension on that coil. Now I can tell you right now, my cotton's too thick. Doesn't matter how much I twist this, I'm not going to be able to get it tight enough to fit through that coil. So I'm going to grab another piece of cotton and essentially do this again. It is a tricky thing to wick a nickel coil. Again, this is one of the reasons people talk about nickel being a pain in the ass, is you really have to have a lot of patience when you work with it. But if you do have patience and you take your time, you can really end up with a very satisfying vape. I mean, personally, I love Temp Control, and I love building my own coils. I don't like using stock nickel coils. For the two main reasons are, one, I don't find I like the flavor at all, and two, I don't really trust that where they're made, they're being as diligent about making sure they have no hot spots. Essentially, that the spaced coils are perfect. I mean, I'm sure they're very, very good, but anything that I can do myself and ensure that my own safety, I'm going to. So here we go. I'm just going to put this through, and I'm going to twist it, and I'm going to make sure that every time I pull it, I'm not pulling the coil. I do want the cotton in there kind of tight, like kind of snug, but I want to make sure that I'm not pulling that coil out of position whatsoever. No tension on that coil. So there we go. Now you'll notice one side of this is thicker and one side's thinner. That's fine. The important thing is that we have enough cotton to cover the juice hole, and that it will, wick into the coil and keep the coil saturated with juice. I do tend to trim my cotton a little long. I'd rather have it a little long than a little short, because if the cotton's short, it means you're pulling it out and redoing it. Now I will do what they call a pancake. I'm just going to fluff up the end just to get it, fluffy and nice. Actually, I'm not even, I think in another video I mentioned, I'm not even going to call this a pancake anymore. I'm going to call it the hourglass wick, because it sort of reminds me of an hourglass. So there we go. Next we're going to be putting back on our barrel. Again, line up your notch with your set screw, and what you're going to want to do is put one side of the coil or one side of the cotton inside the barrel, and then push up with your thumb and push the other side of the cotton into the barrel. Bring your barrel down so it's firmly seated, and tighten your set screw. Next, what we're going to want to do is take our screwdriver, and we don't want to pack our cotton, we just want to push it down so that it's covering that juice hole from the outside, so that when the barrel comes in contact with the juice and the juice touches the hole, it's essentially touching the cotton. The other thing is you want to make sure that the cotton is protecting the deck from being flooded. You don't want juice just pouring into this deck, because then it's going to flood your deck. You're going to get gurgling and or leaking out through your air holes. Not a good thing. So again, we just want to make sure that that's what we're looking for, is that we have cotton in both the juice holes. Now, some people prefer that their cotton stick out through the juice holes. I personally don't. I like it to be flush with the juice holes, or even indented a little bit. But you definitely want the cotton covering the juice holes. Just like that. Now we're going to prime this up. I'm going to put 1 drop of juice on the outside of each of those juice wells and let the cotton suck it up. And I put a rather large drop, but I'm going to do that again over here. And then I'm going to put some on the inside. Not too much. You don't want to flood it because you don't want it, leaking out through the air holes or gurgling. But essentially, that's what it's going to look like when you're done. Let me see if I can get that. There you go. That's it, that's it. That's what we're going for. There you go. It's nicely wicked. And we're going to put it back in our tank. I'm going to fill up my tank. We're going to put the barrel cap back on. And we're going to put it back in our tank. Make sure not to cross thread the screws, because you would at that point essentially ruin your tank. Now, I've pointed this out in other videos if you've seen any of my other in the series. I do like to have my juice holes in the windows. I don't like them behind the supports. You see the steel support? I don't want my juice hole behind there. I want it out in the open so that I can see it, so that I know it's wicking correctly, and I know it's wicking correctly when I see bubbles coming out of those juice holes. And we'll get to that in a moment. The other thing you're going to want to do, put your drip tip in, cover both your air holes, and you can just give it a pull. You just want to make sure that you're getting that pressure and getting the juice to come into the wicks. Obviously I don't have it on a mod, I'm not firing it. Like I say, I just want to make sure that I'm getting juice into the wicks. Okay, here's the moment of truth. We're going to put it on our mod and see how close we came. And again, I know I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Nickel coil, only to be used with a temp control device. Do not attempt to use this with a standard power, wattage mode device. And even if you have a temp control device, do not use this in power mode. This needs to be put in temperature control mode. I cannot stress that enough. And I'm going to switch to temp control, and this is coming at 0.10 ohms. So it's essentially right around where we thought it would be. I believe I said somewhere between, you know, 0.8 or 0.9 and 1.1, 1.2. So 0.1 is bang on, right in there, right where I wanted it to be. I am going to vape this at 450 degrees Fahrenheit to start, just because I don't want to go too high. I want to see what the build is like. I want to try vaping on it a bit before I go whole hog and start pumping up that temperature anymore. Wow, even at 450 degrees on a brand new coil, I'm getting some pretty awesome vapor from that. Flavor's not there yet because the cotton hasn't broken in. A lot of people talk about breaking in the coil. I find that's more of a stock coil thing. I find with the RBA deck and building coils, I don't have to break in the coil so much as I need to break in the cotton. The cotton needs to be, you know, have juice gone through it a few times before it gets rid of that, you know, new cotton flavor. Fucking disgusting, shitty new cotton flavor is what it should be called. But I am going to hit this a few times while we're bench because I do want to make sure that it's wicking correctly and that I'm getting bubbles out of my juice holes. And I'll try to show you that. I'm going to pump up the temperature. I'm going to put it up to 520 degrees. And that just took the flavor from about a 5 to about a 9. The difference in 70 degrees just increased the flavor in this and the density of the vapor exponentially. It's a really great vape. And as you can see, we are now starting to get some bubbles in there. Bubbles mean that it's wicking correctly. That there's an exchange of air and juice happening inside the deck. And that's essentially what we're looking for. This is a really satisfying vape. A really satisfying vape. All right. This concludes the build portion of episode 3, and much like this series,
That was easy.
we'll take another hit on this, we'll head back over to the lounge, and we'll vape on it a bit, we'll talk about it a bit, and we'll wrap it up. Cheers. Cheers and welcome back to the lounge. Hopefully you found some of that interesting. Hopefully you've learned something about nickel coils and about how to do them, you know, safely. How to create a nickel coil so that you don't have any hot spots. How about this, so that you don't have to worry about having any hot spots. As long as you space it properly, you don't have anything to worry about. Some people will tell you they like the stock nickel coils, say that come with Kanger. I personally can't stand them. I tried them for like a day. I own them. I can't stand them. There's no flavor in them. And here's the other important thing though. I'm not slamming on Kanger or any other company that makes a nickel coil. But here's what I believe. If it's so important to make sure that there's not a hot spot with a nickel coil, why are you trusting somebody else to do it for you? You can easily do it yourself, and that way you know. If a coil is being mass produced in a factory and they have quality control, etc., I'm sure that a stock coil, every once in a while, makes it out of those factories with a hot spot that, is just, in my opinion, not safe. So again, I'm not slamming on the stock coil companies. I'm just saying, if you ask me, what nickel coil would I prefer to work on? One that's made in a factory in China, or one that I made myself? I'm gonna fucking take the one I made myself every single time. Every time. So that's my opinion. So here we go. We built this. Hopefully you followed along. You were pausing the video and building as we went. I do need my reading glasses to be able to see this mod. We are coming in at 0.08 ohms, so hey, right in that range that we were talking about. I am vaping this at like about 520 degrees, and this thing is hitting like a truck. I just love it. I love the consistency of the vape. I love the warmth. I love the flavor. I find that it has a lot more flavor than just a Kanthal build, and I don't need to heat it up as much, but I get a really massive amount of vapor and flavor. And personally, I love it. Let's hit this a few times and we'll see what it's like. That's some tasty vape right there, baby. I'd give that for flavor probably about an 8 or 9 out of 10. It's pretty damn awesome. The thing is with temp control and nickel builds, I find that the vape is so consistent. I never get a dry hit, and that's not to say that it's about temp control and dry hit. That's not what I mean. What I mean when I say that is sometimes I'll make a build and I'll hit it aggressive and I'll hit it harder and faster than my wick can keep up, and get a little bit of a dry cotton taste. Not a burnt hit, but just kind of, you can taste the cotton drying out because you've hit it for so long and at such a temperature that Kanthal, as long as you hold that button, that temperature just keeps rising and rising and rising and rising and rising and rising until you've actually, vaporized all the juice that's in the wick, and the wick can't keep up. I find that's kind of a common problem that I find with Kanthal. With nickel though, it's damn consistent. Every single time I hit that button, and whether I'm hitting it for 2 seconds, 10 seconds, or 5 seconds, or 10 seconds, I'm still getting that same beautiful vapor throughout the whole hit. Even though the mod is shutting itself down to lower its temperature or hitting it again to raise the temperature, I find that the vape is just consistent throughout the vape, or throughout the puff, Let's hit this one. You take short hits, big long hits. The point is you can keep hitting it, and it's not going to all of a sudden not be able to keep up and, start drying out your wick and giving you that dry wick flavor, that shitty taste. This is consistent right through the whole vape. And that's one of the reasons I love temp control. And as you saw, it wasn't hard to build. It was very easy to do. In fact,
that was easy.
That's the premise. So, thanks very much for watching episode 3. And hopefully you guys will, over the next few days, check in again and check out episode 4. Episode 4 is going to be dual nickel builds in a velocity clone. It's a little bit different, but hopefully you enjoy it. Anyway, cheers. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget, like and subscribe.